What's up, creators? This is John once again, and you have found the Sketch Magazine podcast. I am here, as always, with Bill Nichols and Bob Hickey, and tonight we are going to talk about the birth of an idea and how to take that to page. How you doing tonight, guys?
Hey, John.
Hey, John, this is Bill. It's been remarked that telling us apart or telling who we each of us are, I mean, our friends know who we are.
But people don't know just by the sound of your voice who you are yet.
They should know Bill,
because
he never talks. So when he does, he stands out.
Well, you would think,
But see, that's kind of an oxymoron because they can't know Bill by his voice if he never talks.
You know, a funny thing is I got an email. No, I got a Facebook thing the other day, and they were like, I think there's something wrong with the podcast. I'm not hearing Bill very much. So I was sitting here working. I opened up the podcast, and Bill, you talked a lot at the beginning, but boy, did I ramble along. I didn't give anybody a chance to talk for a long period of time. I'm like, that's why you haven't heard Bill. Bob's rambling.
Yeah, we use those as bathroom breaks.
Bob's rambling. Keep on going.
Bob's rambling. He'll be good for about 5 minutes.
Hey, before we get into the subject, just real quick, we just broke 3,000 downloads.
Sweet. Thank you, listeners.
I was checking while we were getting ready here, and yep, that's awesome. We're 3,001 right now. So.
Well, that's fantastic.
Okay, so what are we talking about?
Things. No, we are talking about how to take that great idea you have and actually turn it into something.
Okay, are we talking about the point as we already have the script, the plot? Because we were talking about writing in the last one, correct?
Right. So let us assume that they listened to last week's podcast and that they know how to turn it into a script at this point. So where do we go from script to getting it to an actual hold-in-your-hand comic book? What would be our next step?
Well, you need an artist.
Well, that's true.
How you get that artist, if you get the artist after the fact or even before the fact, I mean, that in and of itself could possibly change what you do as far as your script. If you know that a certain artist is drawing something a certain way, you may tailor your script a little bit more toward that artist's style. But you definitely need an artist, and I mean, there are ways we've talked about on other podcasts about how you can, collaborate and stuff. So,
unless of course you are also the artist.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Which, works sometimes and sometimes may not. Because it's always nice to have another perspective on your writing. So,
I think it's fun to sometimes,
Yeah, it's
because I know with the new project, which we're going to announce, it's Camelot Forever, is the name of the project. I'm working with Eddie Newell. Boy, some of these pages that I wrote, he's turning in. I'm thinking, wow, that's not how I envisioned it, but that's awesome, So there's a lot of surprise. Sometimes you look at it and go, how am I going to word this? Or the text that I had thought we were going to go there won't go. So, you got to think about it. The fun thing is usually if you're writing and drawing, as you're writing, you're drawing in your head, if nothing else. You know the layouts, you know the characters, you're doing all that together. But, yeah, when you hand it off to somebody, I enjoy working with other creators. It's part of the fun for me to see what we get back.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm writing, I will envision it as a movie or an animated movie or something. But I've heard it on both sides over the years. Some people say that's a really good idea, and then some people say it's a really bad idea. But what I say is, if it works for you, do it. I don't subscribe to either extreme, but yeah, if it works for you, but however it works for you to get your vision on the page, I mean, you don't have to be locked into it, or it doesn't have to be written in stone. So if the artist changes something, you freak out.
Right.
This is not my dream.
Yeah. No, I was going to say it helps you be a lot less precious I guess is the way to put it about your writing. That you don't get into that. You're doing it wrong because you didn't do exactly every line I wrote on the page.
Yeah.
It helps you realize that what you write is interpreted differently by other
Well,
people.
it's a
So
collaboration between two. Yeah,
it gives you a new perspective.
yeah, it should be. As a writer, you got to be willing to tweak, change, and modify throughout the whole process until it's printed and handed to the reader. I mean, but isn't that true in music or even in movies? The guy who the
Oh, I
guy who writes the
guarantee.
original script for a movie, you know that movie until it's cut and out being shown. It can be changed, modified at any point in time till those final films are done.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the fun part about us is that the reader or the writer can be involved in the process of the changes. And sometimes I've gone back to an artist that says, "Dude, this ain't gonna work." A lot of times I go back to young artists, new artists, and I'm like, "You have to leave room for word balloons." They want to fill up the whole panel, and so and
Right.
that's a common mistake for a new artist. You got to allow room to put the words in the character's mouths if you need to. So, um, but it is a fun collaboration, and you just have to if you're not the artist, you need to be careful and selective to pick the creator that you envision this project to work with. Our current project right now with theclaysway.com, I'm working with Jackie Hernandez. Well, Jackie's done a lot of furry stuff, and she recently did the confectionaries with Darren and Krista at Ringtail. She loves Disney. We were having a hard time really getting these characters down for Claysway with her. Finally, I looked at her and says, "Think Disney." And you could almost see the light bulb click on over her head. She was like,
Right. It
"Oh."
clicked.
The next one she's ripping out was just perfect, dead on, and it's like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, yes, that's what it took, and that was the look we were wanting. And it's evolving, it's getting better, it's getting quicker forward. The characters are looking, consistently over strips now. It takes you researching, finding the correct artist for your project. Is your project a gritty, I don't know, dark Spawn type project? Well, you don't want somebody who draws an animation style drawing that for you.
Right.
Well, you laugh, but some people just grab somebody because they're available. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that
Yeah.
not
No.
only is that going to aggravate you because the project doesn't turn out looking the way you want it, but it's going to make it hard for you to sell this nice, clean, drawn, gritty, dark story. Make sure you get the right person for the job.
Yeah. We're saying be flexible, but don't be too flexible. You want to keep it within the neighborhood of your original vision. Like I ran into a situation myself with something I had written. The artist took some minor adult details in the story and blew them up majorly to make it a fairly adult story, much more than I had originally intended.
Really?
There was way too much nudity in the story, let's
Uh
put
huh.
it that way. And there was not intended to be anywhere near that much nudity. So we had to rethink use of that particular artist on that project because it was too far away from the
Right.
original vision. So it's good to be flexible, but you also have to know when to go. Okay, this is not even close to what I was looking for. We need to
Right.
rethink this. And a lot of times you can just tell the artist, "Hey, I need you to go this way instead." And 99 out of 100 artists will be
Mhm.
great, fine, perfect. I'm glad to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, I had a sort of similar situation with Blood and Roses with Mark Hester, when I
Hmm.
did Orlando, he's a musketeer. Um, he's a time agent from the Musketeer times, and
Right.
I got character sheets back, and on the side notes he said something about him being gay.
Like
What?
I didn't
He's
write
not.
him
He's
gay.
not. He's not gay. He's a musketeer. No, that's how I draw him. With that in mind, what? You know, okay, no, but I understood from his mind point, his whatever,
Right, his mindset.
yeah, and it's like okay, I mean, it was just something he picked up on, or just how he approached drawing the character versus the others. I mean, it didn't change the outlook of the. It didn't, I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker with us, but
Right.
it was just an odd thing, and I mean that's part of the thing about collaboration is getting both sides uh, having input into the project. But I mean, other than that, I mean, he did a lot of the the things that I mean, I had sketched out all the characters and stuff. And that was just his character. It's like, well, this is what what this is how I'm going to draw him in the pages and stuff. And that's pretty much what. And he just had side notes, but that one just caught me off guard, I guess. And like, what?
Yeah, it's very much like once when interviewed, Johnny Depp said when he was doing Ichabod Crane for Sleepy Hollow that he envisioned Ichabod Crane as a cross between Angela Lansbury and a 12-year-old girl. So, it's kind of weird where the creative process takes people sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. It's almost like a filter that you have to run things through.
Right.
Some people, it's when they talk, you have to run things through a filter for that person, and you go, "Oh, okay, that's what
Yeah,
you
now I
mean."
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
like the the host on the other website for our podcast, Chuck Moore, tends to write in a different way than he speaks, and he doesn't always put all the words in there or puts unusual words in there. And we've started to dub it Chuck Speak because I'm one of the few people that is fluent in Chuck Speak and understands what he
Right.
means. But occasionally, it's gotten him into a little trouble, when he will write something and people want to understand what he's saying.
Well, that's
yeah,
Chuck for you.
That's
And
Chuck
we're
for you,
talking
that
about
crazy
Chuck
Chuck guy.
Moore, are we?
Yes,
At
Chuck
Comic
Moore,
Related.
owner, operator, grand poobah of Comic Related. But back to the podcast.
uh, so yeah, we were talking about taking everything, moving to an artist. You've got your artist now, and things are starting to flow in. Let's talk about
Hmm.
if you're assume you're the artist. So as you're writing, like I said, you're constantly sort of thinking page layout, story, concept, how many pages a story is going to be as you're writing. We all do it. Even all writers probably do it. A lot of writers will do thumbnails to give to an artist. That's something we haven't discussed. I know I've seen thumbnails from Neil Gaiman, which was pretty cool. Little ash cans from Sandman. I've seen thumbnails from several different artists. Jackie, when she does a strip, she'll do a thumbnail, show it to me. Looks cool. She'll reproduce the whole thing. Um, so it's a quick way to sort of get to fill on page count, a quick way to get a fill on a page. And, I believe we had somebody write in and ask about doing page layouts or something like that. So you sort of got to think as you're writing that page, are you moving everything along? There's a lot to be thought of as you're transitioning from the writing end to the drawing end of setting up this story of telling. Are you telling as an artist or as your artist you're working with? Are they telling a story? Are they moving the page across so the readers aren't jumping around? Because you got even though it's a horrible thing, you sort of have to think that every reader is a newbie. They have to read left to right, back down to the left-hand corner, and back across. You've got to think in that direction. You sort of have to make sure the page is moving along the way it's telling a story. Are the panels laid out to tell it properly? Are the characters moving things along? Just a lot of thought to have to be given to setting up a successful story. Does any of that make sense?
yeah, yeah. Here's, for example, this is one way that I approach it. One of the things that you really have to be aware of is your own pacing as far as your writing, because you don't want it to peak too soon, so that the rest of the issue is sort of it's just downward slope, but you want it to build. So what I will do is I will number a page sometimes, 1 through, say it's 24 pages, and I'll make notes about where I think certain things should happen, and then I will do thumbnails. And as I said, things kind of in a movie format, but they're also in a comic book format because I've seen a lot of comic book pages, and I know sort of what I want it to look like, but I'm not tied into that. So I'll do thumbnails using those notes, and I will build off of that. And then comes maybe I'll sit down and I'll write out the script with the captions and the scene, what I envision the scene to be, and any notes that I think the artist would need. A suggestion of dialogue. I'm not tied into where it has to be a certain thing, because I've seen scripts a lot of times from newer writers that have so much verbiage that there's no way. I mean, it just might as well be a book with some book plates, some illustrations.
You ever seen Alan Moore's script?
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. And I mean, it works, but I mean, there are a lot of people who are on Alan Moore, and I'm one of them. Yeah, it is for me. It's a process of building on, of going through that idea and turning it into a script. So there is some preparation beforehand, and even after you start getting the pages back, your script may change, and mine does some as well, because you may think of a better way to phrase something.
Yeah. So I got something to add to that. I got the third page of the Camelot Forever story in, and I wrote this over a year ago, went back and tweaked it right before I gave it to Eddie 2 months ago. I get this page, I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome, right? I'm going to script it. I went back. I didn't script this page, I plotted it. So I told them what we wanted, but I didn't have a clue what they were talking about at this point in time. So basically, it's a 5-page scene. I had to go back to page 1, reread it, get it in my mind what the conversation is. And I know what it's saying, but I'm like, okay, what verbiage do I need to put on this page to get across to the reader what's going on?
Right, because
I know, right. But the setting is like the first panels, you can see an opening in the cave behind her. So, I sort of put high above the raging battle, because I know the first 3 pages are the battle scenes. So, I had to put a setting box in there. And then I'm like, okay, she is doing something here, and I need to put. So it was cool, a little scary, because I was trying to do it on the fly, which you never try to push something like that. But it was exciting. It was a lot of fun to sit back and think, ooh, I got to rethink this. And on the flip side, I've had scripts where I just wrote everything out. I knew exactly what everybody wanted to say, everything. And there you just go, you cut and paste a letter, and you're done, you move on. So it was exciting to get it. It wasn't exciting trying to do it late at night and get it done to take to a show with me. But right. It was a lot of fun doing it that way. So, yeah, and that was speaking things change. Now, what did I originally ever have them saying there? I have no clue. I don't know. When I plotted it out, I have no clue what. I knew what I wanted in the scene, but I really, at this point, have no clue what they were going to say at that point in time. So, sorry, Bill. That was something I just experienced.
Yeah. No, a lot of people, and especially a lot of people starting out, have a bad habit of, I guess, overwriting is the best way to put it. The whole point of comics, sequential art, is to get the reader from point A to point B. You want to get them from the top of the page to the bottom, from the first page to the last. So you really need to think of it as if it were different shots from a movie. If they were actual pieces of film, which, will mean nothing to people who grew up in the area of videotape and digital, digital film, but still, old films were made up of many, many frames of single shots. Well, that is really what your comic book is. You need to move the things around the page And as a writer, it's your job to remember that you have to keep a certain pacing for your artist to be able to keep a certain pacing. Because essentially, if you have an action style comic book, the reader should be able to read that whole book cover to cover in 15 minutes or less.
Right.
I mean, they should be able to get right through it. Boom, boom, boom. That's the way the action's happening. It should be boom, boom, boom. If anything in there holds them up and stops them, you failed to keep that momentum going. Now, that's different if you're writing a Talking Heads book, like, say, like A Strangers in Paradise. That you want people to mull over and look at and pay attention to. But an action story, you really need to keep that pacing going. And, it's really incumbent on the writer first and then the artist second to keep up the momentum. If someone is leaving the room, you don't have to draw them getting up, walking across the floor, grabbing a hold of the doorknob, opening the door, walking out the door. You don't need all that. You could have them getting up, you could have them hand on the doorknob, you could have the door
Right.
closing. So 3 panels for what would take, if it was a piece of film, like 20 or 30 more shots. So you really have to keep that in mind as you're writing your story. Yeah, everybody starts with an idea, and that's kind of where we started this podcast was the idea. Well, you really need to know how to flesh out that idea, and if it's an action idea, you're going to flesh it out a lot differently than if it's a story, or if it's if it's two guys behind a counter talking about how they're not supposed to be here today.
Right.
It's a lot different if you're Alan Moore or Kevin Smith.
Right. Right. Yep. I agree. One thing we haven't talked about, and this isn't so much about layout, but when you do your story, and before you go get an artist and everything, make sure it needs to be a comic book.
True.
Darren, that's Darren from Ringtail Cafe. Him and I had a conversation today, and Darren's always, I love Darren to death, and he wants to tell me about his ideas and projects and stuff. And he told me about this one, because came off ever, there's some magic. And he told me, did I tell you about my idea about magic in modern day? And I said, no. And he went on, and he has this whole concept so well thought out and knew every detail. I looked at him and says, Darren, that's a novel, not a comic. And he just looked at me blank.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you could not get that information across in a comic. That really needs to be a novel. You have it so down. You have the ideas and the concept and the characters and the whole thing down. You need to write that. Don't wait for an artist. Get that written. So, we want to do comics. We're in love with this whole sequential art form. If you're listening to this podcast, most likely you are too. But there is a certain project that you might want to look at and says, wow, I'm not going to collaborate. I'm going to write this. And if you want to collaborate, bring in an artist to do your cover. Maybe do some chapter plates or something like that if you want some art. So yeah, I'm just saying, I know this is about comics and stuff, but make sure this project needs to be illustrated, because sometimes a project you look at and there's just so much information, so much detail there, that it might benefit you and it more if you go ahead and write a prose. And it's getting as simple to get prose out there digitally and in print as it is comics. Print on demand works for prose. Print on and digital works with the prose. So even in prose, you got the Kindle, which is a big plus for it. The comics really don't have right now, unless you're doing a black and white comic. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, think about that. All right, back. It was just something that hit me today with Darren, and I was amazed. He's got so many cool ideas and stuff. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, that needs to be a book. So, but
That's a really good point. And I've noticed that well, with Darren in particular, and with a lot of people that I see, that they have so many ideas that they'll never be able to get them all out in comic form. Um, and honestly, even though we are a comics podcast, more or less, we still have great love, and we, or at least, well, I'll speak for all of us. We all have aspirations beyond comics in the publishing field. We all have a novel somewhere inside of us. Some at varying degrees more than others. You know, um, at one time, my wife and I sat down and fleshed out the ideas for some children's books. So, you know, comics aren't the end all and be all, but they are a nice kind of springboard to get you into other things. Now, of course, I would never say leave
Right. No.
comics, you know, but you can do, especially now, you can really do it all. Uh, Thanks to the advent of digital, you really can kind of do it all. I mean, the not only the Kindle but the
Mhm.
iPad. You can pretty much write your novel, set it up on the web, and be able to download it for your bookshelf all on the same iPad. So
That's true.
it's really a lot to think about.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned before, Mark McKenna has Banana Tail. That's one of his personal projects. It's a kid's book.
Right.
And there are, I think, it was a college class maybe that was doing an animation based on that. Uh, and then there was just different things. And you can go to bananatail.com and he's got some of that stuff, links to it or whatever on there. And I've heard people say, more to the effect that comics is a dead end, that just don't have a clue that there are other things that you can do beyond that.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from collaborating with other people because that inspires you to
Right.
do other things. So,
Well, that's a ridiculous notion, anyways, of comics being a dead end. I mean, given the sheer amount of material that is out there based on comics and other medium,
right.
it's just, I would think comics is very much of a
Yes.
springboard these days. I mean, for example, if you have aspirations toward doing like pop-up books, I I was sent this amazing pop-up book from the people at DC that is all based on the DC characters, and it's a phenomenal book. Um, of course, it has origin things and other things in the book about all the DC characters, but that's one avenue to go. It's not a comic per se, but it's definitely comics
Right.
adjacent. And I constantly go in the bookstore and they have young reader books based on superheroes, Star Wars, the Clone Wars. There's a ton of young reader books for that. Starring the comic heroes, but in these more kid-friendly situations.
Right. And, and
You
it.
know, of course, there's animation
Right.
too. So
Well, and if comics was the end all, why do we have creators like Josh Whedon? He
yeah,
he does he sees. And to me, TV is short term. I mean, Buffy was a long run, and Angel had okay, but
right.
they just announced Dollhouses is going to comics. That dude's still got more stories to tell, and he's bringing a
Oh yeah,
following
tons.
in with him. Um, what was Chuck? Chuck watches the Food Channel, and there's a cook on there who travels around the world. And I can't remember his name, and I think you guys might read something on CR about it. You
Anthony
got it.
Bourdain.
He enjoys comics, and he's created a book that's coming out, I think, through Dark Horse.
Right.
So comics are a spring filled for tons of concepts, and we got right now more comics that are being made into movies and stuff because comics are so they're not easy to create. I don't want to tell anybody, oh yeah, it's easy to make comics because it's not. takes a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, and a lot of time, and they're worthwhile. I mean, there's not many other medium out there that you can create your book and then go buy a table at a show and sit there and try to build a readership, or go online and
Right.
try to build it. So, but comics are open that way. And if you got something that looks good, it catches a reader, it catches people's eyes, it's going to be successful, whether you're self-published or whatever. But yeah, the comics being in, I'd have to totally disagree. We see more and more and more people coming into this market with either bringing concepts that ran. I wouldn't say some of these concepts ran their course, because Firefly is one of them. It wasn't given a chance in TV
Right,
at all.
exactly.
I'm a latecomer to this. I watched it on DVDs, but
Mhm.
I gobble up any of the comics they produce on it, because that whole concept was not given a chance to run its ground.
Right now, Dark Horse has its own digital distribution arm, and they're going to be running tons more of stuff like the Firefly, all the Whedon, pretty much
Right.
everything Whedon related will be on that as well. So, and I heard the best quote the other day for people who do or who are into digital comics. There's always those people that say digital's going to kill the print comics. So I heard the best quote the other day. Uh, they said that print comics are collectible and digital comics are consumables.
I like that.
Yeah, so I thought that made the best sense of anything I've ever heard.
Now,
Digital comics are there to read. You're not going to necessarily hang on to them. If you do, of course, it's not taking up physical space; it's taking up
right.
virtual space. So,
I think digital comics we need to really tackle through and through. I mean, we could talk about weekly deep. We could put the whole podcast on a weekly basis. It changes so much. But,
oh yeah, of course.
what I heard when I went to New York is that or I think it's Marvel was excited. They released a digital version, I don't know which title it was, and a print version same week at the same price. And
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to think. I
I
can't
can't
remember
remember
which
what
book
it
it
is
was, but
either, but
and
yeah.
the digital versions did really, really well.
DC had done that as well with Justice League Generation
What's
Lost.
funny is I have my retailer account still with Diamond and everything, and they
Mhm.
evidently, because DC caught a little flack from a handful of retailers or something, I don't know. DC is offering
Right.
returns on that book, which is I
Ah,
think is ridiculous. Retailers need to get,
it is very ridiculous.
some of these retailers need to get off their high horse, understand digital, embrace digital, and use it. They're going to sell trades of books that they're not selling many copies of.
Right.
So, they need to be ready and prepared to handle getting those trades in, listening to their customers who are reading digital and what they're reading. And yeah, I hope they step it up. But
Well, yeah, I mean, this is definitely dating me a little bit, but I remember back in the day when they did CD
hmm
singles. There's nothing to say that they can't do some sort of digital version of the comic or a series of comics, put them on flash drives or flashcards or something like that you could pop into your computer in the same way that you would go and buy a physical
yeah, well, I
comic
think
book
I think
right
with
now.
downloading, you're not going to see much. I mean, we researched mediums heavily last year, and
Right,
I think downloads are getting so fast and files are getting so small that it's going to
right,
bypass. I mean, there's going to be some of that when you sell. Oh, we're getting ready to offer a sketch collection by 1 through 10, digital formats.
right.
I'm giving them 3 formats: CBR, CBZ, and PDFs. Those are 3 different type of formats they can read on. And then
Yeah,
we're going to include like the first 10 or so of these podcasts. So that's sort of like, here's this whole collection for one price. You don't have to download it. It's right here. Move them over to your files.
Right.
Move them on your computer. Do whatever you want. So those are going to
Yeah,
work.
maybe something like
but
that.
singles, man, the
Yeah.
download is so quick. All you gotta do is put online, put a link, boom, and it starts sending.
Yeah, that's true. Or I wonder if, like, I know GameStop has really pushed the subscription services for a lot of the gaming systems. I wonder if maybe, and I'm old enough to remember when they opted for subscriptions in, they actually advertised for them in the
Right.
books, where you could get a subscription to whatever title. So I wonder if that might be a viable option, that retailers could sell subscriptions to a
I think
certain
so.
book.
I think
That might be a
I
way to
think
go.
what it's going to have to come down to is you're going to be able to buy a card, much like you can World of Warcraft or something like that. These cards will be coded with the retailer's information, so that when they're being used, the vendor, the supplier, the distributor, they know where it's coming from. And so either the retailer makes its money off selling the $10 card, the distributor and the creator makes a little less, but they're getting some money back to the stores. Or you could flip that around and the retailers could give away the cards and get the money on the back end. There's a couple different modes you could work. So we're just going to see how it all works out.
And I think you're very right. Those retailers that refuse to adjust are going to be gone. There's really no other way to put it. I mean, when the back issue market really started to fall out, sure, people groused and groaned about it, but the smart people adjusted. Now they're going to have to adjust to this.
I mean, I don't think floppies are gone. I've said this in the past.
No,
and
they
I
never
don't,
will be.
I think this is going to grow over the next 5 years or longer, a stronger trade market. So, yes.
Which is good because trades, a lot of non-comic book stores will not bother with floppies, but they're fine to get trades. They see them as, just any other book for the most part. You'll find those in a Borders or, Walden Books or stuff like that. So,
and a bookstore makes good money off of trade. Instead of giving the same space for 10 floppies that he's going to make $1 a floppy, he's going to make $10. That same space, you could have 3 trades or 4 trades, and he'll profit $20 to $30 off of that same space.
Right.
So, and the trades you can edge. So there's all kinds of stuff we can get into. And we really need to at some point in time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do remember, working at a bookstore that this was years ago. This was more than 10 years ago. The trade section went from a shelf to a bookshelf and then to its own section. So it's definitely not, a flash in the pan or anything like that. It's definitely something that's going to be around for some time.
It's not going nowhere. Keep creating, guys.
Yep, indeed.
Okay, we got way off track, which is very usual for the sketch crew here.
Yeah. Imagine
and Bill?
Well, when you start talking about all that stuff, I mean, I don't have anything to contribute to that.
Store
really.
business, though.
That's true.
Yeah, but that was back in the days of back issues and really before trades really started coming out. So
back when comics were carved out of stone.
Wow.
Yeah, and you were one of my customers. So
I know. They were heavy carrying those home every week.
We were talking about. Man, I remember when they were drawn on slate tablets with chalk. Oh no, wait a minute. Telling a story and transcribing it from script to art, script to art. I think we did a pretty good job on talking about moving it from the actual plotting, scripting, to telling a story. One thing we need to talk about is the art's going to transition from the cover into the story. And at some point, we want to discuss setting up a good cover.
Yes, we do, because all too often, well, not so much now, but definitely back in the day, you saw covers that had zero to do with what's going
And
on in the
that's still a
story.
huge complaint. These Marvel editors, DC, they all have this thing that the big group shot, drawn by J. Scott Campbell or whatever. Just do this group shot. That's what everybody wants. And those are
Right.
cool, but I really like the day when John Byrne did a cover and it told us what was inside. You know what I mean? George Perez did a cover. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that was awesome with his art inside. You know. Now I don't mind specialty covers, variants, but you have
Right.
to put together a good cover. You got to design a good cover. This happened today. We're working on the first cover for the Claysway collection. It's going to be like a little 20-page comic that I'm going to take to Detroit Fan Fair in a few weeks. And Jackie started roughing up at lunch. Started roughing up a cover, and she's roughing up some different ideas. And the tendency for an artist, especially a right-handed artist, is to draw right to left. She drew the characters. She wants them pointing, which I thought was really cool, but she showed them pointing to the left.
Oh
And this
no.
book is going to be laid out because it's got comic strip. It's going to be only 6 inches tall, but 9 inches long. It's going to be laid out sideways.
Right.
And it's a pretty cool little format.
So they were pointing towards the
They were
stable.
pointing towards the close of the book. So I looked at her and I says, you know what? That's
Yeah.
a beautiful design. I didn't say a word to her. And she needed to get her ideas out. And that's one thing. Be respectful of the artist.
Mhm.
I says, now we're going to have one problem. She's like, what? I says, it needs to be flipped around. And she just looked at me real weird. I says, one thing I got a lecture from Dick Giordano, 10, 15 years ago, was that everything needs to move forward. Everything needs to push everything along, even the covers. And if you're going to have somebody pointing or looking, you need to have them pointing towards the opening of the book. So you're looking across those characters and they're pushing you right towards opening that book up to see what's inside. And it's all subliminal in our heads, but it works. Move that action, move that storm, move those people, but have them looking slightly. If they're not looking dead on you, have majority of them looking towards that opening of that book. Make that customer open that book up to see what's inside, because that's the job of a cover. And we really need to talk about design, logo, layout, the whole thing of covers at some point. Actually, I'm going to make a note of that for next.
Yes, I was about to say that'd be a good
Design
next
covers
week.
next week. All right, good, written down. But movement's a big thing, and moving along inside the pages, whether you're moving a page from the left page to the right page, is important. You need to write it so the artist can do it, and you hope the artist pulls it off. But also, you got to move that page from the right page to opening that page up. And it doesn't. A lot of this is subliminal stuff. Movement of backgrounds, movement of motion, movement of face, something. But you've got to want to keep things moving. One of the pages I just got back from Eddie, I said, one of the girls is running up this hill, and her older uncle's following her. This is a right-handed page. You know which way she's running up the hill? To the right, towards the opening of the book. He could have drew her running straight at me. Anyway, I didn't state it. Eddie's been around for a long time. He knew, keep that all moving forward. So every shot, faraway shot, has them moving to the right. Close-up shot, she's moving towards the right, but she's looking over her shoulder at her uncle, who is facing her. So it's all moved. And you don't realize that until you hear somebody say it. So when Dick so many years ago told me that, it was something that clicked in my head. It was like, oh, you don't see that until somebody tells you about it. And even now, I can read a comic and not think, oh yeah, they drew this, and this. When I read a comic, I read it to enjoy. But when I'm designing one or I'm getting one back, I will go, oh, okay. The cool thing nowadays, we have tools with Photoshop and everything. You can go in there and flip a panel. long as it doesn't have any
Right.
text or logos or anything on it, it's going to make them backwards. You can get in there and move some things around. So there's some tools that you can use. But yeah, it's amazing, and you know, it's all subliminal. And is it done all the time? Heck, no. Does all the modern day creators do it? No, they don't. Does some of the better storytellers do it? Yes, they do. So yeah, it's stuff to think about. That was my tangent, guys.
No,
And
and I have seen people do it. Um, it looks wrong, and I've seen it done wrong, but I've also seen it in a few cases where it is done sort of almost to bring the story to a halt or to sort of change up the pacing. But that's tricky, and you have to know what you're doing to do that. But I've critiqued portfolios before and brought that up, and uh, whoever it was trying to, the artist trying to justify what he was doing, is like, but it's not accomplishing that. You're not doing what you set out to do. It would work better if you do this. And then I explain sort of what Dick Giordano said to you. It is a subliminal thing, and it's a matter of pacing too, and it works if it's done well. And as the artist and the writer, you both have to be conscious of what kind of pace you want to set for this book, things you want to highlight, things you want to bring out, and what the writer writes into the script or the plot comes out through the art. And there are verbal cues to the artist who brings them out in visual cues to the reader. And it's in that it's a collaboration with all three of them. I mean, and also the letters and the colors too are also play in that too and add to. But you've got really is a collaboration in this experience of creating comics, and we keep saying, don't get tied up into doing things one way, or don't get locked into things. And the biggest thing is do it, is to try it. If it's something that you really want to try out, go ahead and try it. If it doesn't work, you've learned from it, especially if you're coming up, or if you're trying to go to that next level or shoot for being published, even not even just being self-published, or small press stuff or vanity publishing, but to be published by somebody else. Once again, you have to bring your A game to what you're doing, and you can't just I'll just say half-ass do it, because I've seen it, and you're not doing anybody any favors. You're not doing yourself giving yourself enough credit to bring this thing to life, and that you're shortchanging yourself and you're shortchanging your readers. So keep that in mind. I'm pointing out anybody in particular, but that's just a general observation. You have to. You can't just do it for yourself. You're doing it for the readers too, and you have to be conscious of people who are going to be coming after you, reading this thing and following you and investing in you. And if you're a bud about it, or it's like, well, this is my vision, and you either like it or don't. Well, okay, go on to the next book. But there are ways to do all these things, and really you have to just create comics, and that's what we keep talking about, is creating comics. And there are tons of ways to do it, and our ways, we've got years to back up the stuff that we talk about, and go off on tangents about. And I just did once again.
Yes,
that's okay.
That's what we're here
for. That's when I get into it, when we start talking about the creative stuff, and because I've been the retailer, I've been the reader, I've been all the other things, but I'm several years removed from that, so I'm not as comfortable talking about those things. But when we're talking about the act of creating, or the zen of creating, yeah, I'm all there, and I can be diplomatic, but I want to be encouraging, but I also want you to do it. Take some responsibility for doing it yourself. Don't don't just rely on, if you're the writer, the artist bringing you along, and if you're the artist, the writer bringing you along. You both have to come to this thing and meld your styles, just like the penciler and the inker. That is a synthesis of style, of two styles. It's not just an inker retracing the pencil lines. Thank you, Chasing Amy. Love Kevin Smith, and but I mean that in explaining what an inker does, that's what I've people get it when you start talking about it. It's a collaboration of a pencil artist, and an ink artist, and merging their styles. And same thing with a writer and a penciler, or a pencil or artist, depending on if he's doing everything, or if it's all the same person. It's a synthesis of all those things coming together and creating something new, or new to somebody anyway.
Right.
Set your goals. We
Right.
talked about that, I think, last podcast or the one before. Set your goals and work with the other creators. Set those goals and work towards achieving those goals, and readjust when you need to. And get it
Right.
up.
Exactly. And Bill brought something up that I wanted to add on to. About the danger of being too arrogant or too full of your own writing. There's no such thing as being too hip for the room. Or there's no such thing as your stuff being too smart for the room. No, it's not. You need to write to the room, which the room in this case is your audience. If your stuff is not palatable to the general audience, then go somewhere and write an esoteric novel that 3 people will read.
Are you wanting to build a readership? Is that
right? Are you wanting to build a readership? Or are you wanting to be, are you wanting to be the supposed intellectual of comics? That's been tried, and it doesn't work. That's been tried in magazines. That's been tried in a lot of things. And those things tend to fall away pretty quickly because, your readers do not like being insulted by your writing, that if you are insinuating that they are too dumb to get your meaning. Now, it could be that you are too dumb to explain your meaning in a way that people will get it.
If you're explaining that much, you're over-explaining. You're not allowing the artist
or if you're explaining
do his job,
That's true too. That's why I was talking before about over-writing. If it takes what the artist put down and 50 pages of dialogue to get the point across, you're doing it wrong.
At that point, you bring in an editor, and not a friend.
Exactly.
Or maybe a distant friend or somebody who's in this market. I bring in a couple. I mean, John, you've edited strip. Bill, you've edited strips. You both were tied up yesterday with your day jobs. I called Bill Love. I had a strip. Darren plotted it. I knew the general census of what to put on the Claysway strip, but really didn't have it down. I was exhausted still. Hadn't caught up on sleep. I wrote the basic stuff, ran it by Bill. Bill brought back his ideas. We tweak it, and I think it's one of the better written strips we've done. Bring in outside sources and let them strip away. Be willing to listen to that outside source.
And that may definitely be a podcast for another day where we talk about editing. Yeah. Well, not just getting an editor, but what it takes to be a good editor.
Yes. And to be a creator who wants to listen.
Right.
Now, I apologize to our listeners. This podcast has been everywhere. I want to go back to the original concept of transitioning your writing to art just for a second. Because Bill was going on about that, and then he moved off on his comic mentor stuff, which I love. That's why I want to kick back and listen to Bill talk, because he doesn't do it enough. But I had this in my head, one thing. and I kept talking about flow of page and everything, is that when not
Mm-hmm.
all possible, you have a change of scenes. Try to do that on the flip of the page. You know what I mean? If you're going to change
Hmm.
from,
Yeah.
this team fighting here to the villains inside of a cave, boy, I don't think I'd ever write that scene. But anyway, um, don't
Yeah.
do it on a spread, if at all possible. If there's ads inside of this book, find out where they're going to go before it's actually drawn, or have some pages that you can plug in. Because if you're going to change the scene, let it be when they flip it over, it's a whole new scene. It's a whole new cliffhanger. It's whatever. So that I just want to go back to that. That's sort of important in laying out and writing and working with the artist is I guess it's the pacing of it, and the pacing of reading your story, not just creating your story, telling your story, but in reading the story, are you enticing that reader to flip the page to see what's next? Oh, who's this characters? What's going on here? You know, it
Right.
adds some excitement to reading the book. I mean, the book's running $2.95, $3.95, whatever. You're getting 20 pages or so, 30 pages a book. I don't even think you get 30 actually. Story page 20 to 28
No.
maybe. So
20 pages plus
yeah.
ads now, I think is the
So
way it
you need the
goes.
most bang, and you need the most. You need to think about all these little factors when you're writing, and when the artist, if it's yourself or you bring somebody in, talk with them about how, okay, now this is going to turn. This is an exciting moment here. So sorry, I just wanted to go back to that. I think it's an important thing
Mm-mm.
to
No,
talk
not at
about
all.
and to share with them. I've had those troubles myself, where I've written a story and it's great. Really didn't think about it. Got the pages back, they all look beautiful. Put it all into a comic and read it and was like, okay, that was decent. But boy, if I had got rid of that page, so then the next part opened up with a suspenseful new villain or new person, and
Right.
then just allowed that throughout, it would have been a better read. And that's the reason with this
Right.
podcast. We're trying to give you our experiences, our successes and our failures, and so you would benefit from it. I mean, as I started to learn that, there's been a few times I slid some ads in because I messed up my pacing,
Hmm.
and I'm like, oh well, I'll put an ad in here, and this will set the pacing back up to where I want it. So there's ways
Right.
around it, but it's just think it through. As you're writing, and as you're if you're not the writer, if you're the artist, and you got handed a script, don't hesitate to talk to the writer and says, you know what, this would pace better if we did this, or broke it down here. You got to empower the artist also, and let them contribute. Don't hesitate to do ash cans. Those are the greatest little thing. Take a bunch of copier paper, fold them in half, and write out the page numbers on them, and look at what this thing's going to look like when it's read by the reader. Um, that's a huge tool that many professionals still today use. They want to know what the reader is going to see as they're flipping through their book. So create a little ash can, just do some little doodles or little roughs so you can connect to what's moving on. And the writer can do this. Don't have to be able to draw to create an ash can. Anybody can put stick figures on there and make little notes of scenes and stuff. Um, it just helps you visualize what the story's going to look like. And it's a little tool to really use. That it costs you a couple sheets of paper and a little bit of time to fold it to create. So
Right. And you're probably doing this already because you love comics, so you're probably reading them. But take a comic, don't read it. Don't read the dialogue and the captions and all that. Look at it.
you're supposed to read.
Look at
Oh,
well,
okay.
supposedly, but just look at the way, look at the flow of it. Look at what you were saying about how it
Hmm.
transitions. Realize that you have a front page, and then you have pages 2 and 3 are actually the first full inside page
Right.
or pages. So you really have to think in that sort of linear way that you can't switch from. It can't be day on page 2 and night on
Mhm.
page 3. Well, it can, but you'll mess up the pacing of
Right.
your story. And just putting a "and later" box doesn't always
Right.
work.
Right.
So you really need to keep all this stuff in you. I know we're giving you tons of advice, and it's hard to keep it all in your head, but luckily you have it where you can go back and
Right.
listen to it
Make notes.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
Make notes.
And now
Make
some
Yes.
people are.
There will be a
No, no,
test.
you're the teacher, aren't you? No
Yes,
test. I don't
exactly.
like tests.
No test.
One thing to think of, some people said, well, I'm going to do it digitally. They're going to read this one page at a time. Most readers out there will show 2-page spreads. Now, they're not as
Yep.
readable as 2 page, but you can still, and for me, it's still the joy of reading a comic. I'll pull up the 2-page spread, look at it, then I'll zoom in on the single page and move over and read the next page. But for some reason, I always want to see the 2 pages there in front of me. Is that going to
Right.
change with the youth of the day? My youngest, probably. But right now, it's not. Most readers out there will still show 2-page spreads. So it's still important to think how that story is flowing throughout.
Right. And honestly, too, you may be digital right now, but you may someday want to put that into a graphic novel. So you're going to need to know that page, the way the pages lay out, because someday it may very well be on
Right,
pages.
right, definitely. I mean, there's some properties we're talking about that we might release digitally, but we'll do limited
Right.
edition print runs of the comics just to take the shows and stuff with us, knowing they're more
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
catching the older crowd or just getting it out there with us at shows because you can't carry a digital comic with you. Well, you can.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
little
you
hard.
can if a disc and everything, but if it's a single one shot, you're not going to. So some of those we know we're going to really push digitally, but then just we'll do a limited run or print on demand to have some with us when we do the shows next year. So we
Hmm.
have to be thinking storytelling, pacing, and the whole works. So, wow, tons of information all over the place. Sketch Crew does it again. We really showed our ADHD dyslexia going
There you go.
everywhere. And yes, that was a plug for Claysway.com. Um,
There you go.
these podcasts are fun. I really enjoy talking to you guys because it gets me pumped. It gets my juices pumped. I like getting responses from the people out there. Either some of them were really getting pumped. I know a gentleman, one of the fans from CR, our podcast where we talked about setting deadlines, modifying those deadlines. He said he sent that podcast to everybody he's working with. So let them know that yes, you
Nice.
have to set up deadlines, but you can also modify them, adjust them, and make it work. So hopefully we're reaching you a little bit. Hopefully you're getting a little bit of information out there. But I think we killed whatever subject we were trying to kill there. What do you guys think?
It died
Uh,
a painful
so
death. But speaking of
yeah.
mail, we actually it came to the group mailbox. We did get a nice
Hmm.
piece of mail um, from a gentleman named Scott Hamilton, who has a website called Hamilton's
Cool.
Caricatures. Of course, well, not of course. I shouldn't put it that way, but he does say that he loves the site and really loves all the information we are giving him. He has asked if we ever thought about focusing on different types of art. In his case, he is a caricature artist and belongs to an organization of 600 plus caricature members worldwide. And caricature is apparently a largely growing
Awesome.
art form. So, yes, well, I guess the short answer to that is we touched on it a little bit this time. We love other medium, but in the case of caricature, I just don't know enough about
Nah.
it. So, nope, not really at all. I mean, I can do a real basic caricature, but anything beyond that, with the skill of some of the things that I saw on Mr. Hamilton's website, I'm not really good. So, I put it to you, Scott Hamilton, that if you have the opportunity or the inclination to create some how to's on how to do caricatures, we will gladly run those on our Sketch Magazine Daily
Yes.
forum.
Yes.
If it is a text or a print version, we will also run that, and we will run a link back to your website as well.
And
So
also post something over in the
let us
community.
know.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, please sign up. I know it says here that he signed up for the community, and as soon as he gets approved, he will be posting.
Awesome.
So thank you for that.
Sounds great. And that
Yep.
was the mail, other than the pats on the back and the booze. Tell Bob to quit putting the business down, industry down.
Oh, I thought someone was sending you
Oh,
alcohol.
booze. Oh, yeah.
Booze.
No alcohol for me.
A nomenclature
Uh-oh.
problem there.
So do we need to touch up on what's been going on over at the online?
We can. There has been more than a few things that have popped up since the last time we
Yes.
spoke. Let's see. Going in descending order, I came across a tutorial by Scotty Young, who has quickly become one of my favorite artists lately. I really like the Wizard of Oz stuff he recently did. I also really like a Human Torch mini series that he did that I don't think many people read, but I thought it was really good. So go check that out. It's him working with Sketchbook Pro, which I believe if you have an iPad you can download, or I believe you can get it elsewhere, but I believe it might be slightly pricey. So tread carefully with that one. Also, speaking of artists that I absolutely love, I am the world's biggest Jim Lee fan. I would have a completely happy day just sitting next to him watching him draw all day. So I found some stuff of him sketching DC characters, Black Canary, Batman, and Green Lantern. So I put that on there. And then for Monday, or the previous Monday, I put a fairly long set of videos of a panel on breaking into comics. We've touched on that here and there. We've touched on that in the magazine repeatedly. So this is a group of people, Peter David being one of them, and several people from Marvel elsewhere on the panel, talking about breaking in at a con. Then another thing by Jim Lee it wasn't necessarily intentional that I put two things in, but I found this thing of him drawing on the back of an iPod using a marker and a whiteout pen. And it's pretty incredible. And I also found out at the New York show this past weekend, an iPad was given away. And Jim Lee had drawn on the back of that as well at the DC Digital panel. So whoever has that iPad right now, you are an incredibly lucky individual. Let's see. Also, Jim Mayford, I always say his name wrong. I found a video of him at the New York Comic Con last year. One video is a brief interview of what he was up to at the time. And the second is him creating art for this thing called the Arts Project, which is once again creating artwork for phone covers and things like that. And I believe the money of that went to various sorts of charities. And then another one from Freddie Williams. Freddie Williams is, of course, the DC digital artist who is behind the creation of the book that they put out a few years ago on how to create digital art. Really good book. I can highly recommend it to people. So go check that out. And then I have a thing on Taiwanese creators. creators from Taiwan. There is a ever increasing number of Asian creators in comics
I
these
saw a
days.
lot of
So
them. I'm sorry. I saw a
several,
lot of them at New York.
yeah, I'm not surprised because there's such a large Asian population in New York. So there are several. There's actually this website that centers specifically on Taiwanese creators, and I found this video of them hanging out at a con. I'm not quite sure which one. And then I think this is. Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
there's two more that we hadn't gotten to yet. Way back in the day, the book came out, Drawing the Marvel Way. Well, also equally back in the day, you can tell by the look of Stan Lee in this picture that this is many decades old. That they put out a video series. Well, you could never find that anywhere
Mm-hmm.
for free. Actually, you could never find it anywhere, period. But recently, I came across it on YouTube, and I didn't want to run the entire thing, but I found a really great tutorial on drawing the figure. So that kind of centered on stuff I was doing in my day job as well. So I thought that would be good. And then the other one, this is kind of a nod back at Bill, actually, because Bill's really the first person that introduced me to ElfQuest. And eh. So I found this video from back in the 80s of Wendy Peeney or Penny discussing Peony. Okay, discussing ElfQuest. Actually, just discussing her work as a woman in comics, but also discussing, just ElfQuest and other comic things in general. And I do believe that brings us back up to the
Yes, it
current
does.
time.
So, Bill, what's going on over at the communities?
We're still having the contest, the DVD contest. A couple of people have said, "Yeah, I'm going to do the draw my favorite rock star in concert." That's on comic related on the forum, and we've got some new artists posting on the forum, and it's really pretty
Good,
cool.
good.
So it's always new
Right.
blood.
And you can also leave comments or suggestions from these podcasts over there. Yeah.
Yes, you may. Each podcast has its own thread, and feel free to ask questions, comments, if you want clarification or if you have a different take on something. Feel free to leave it, because it's not just us responding. It's open to all the other people on the forum too, and you get a lot of cross pollination as far as interest and what other people have taken from the same thing.
Right.
So.
And I've said it in the past, Chuck Moore has built a wonderful community over there. Great group of people. They're just, they're right in there what we were building at Afterburn. Everybody's positive. I mean, they give you suggestions, ideas, but they're very positive. And if you're not a member, definitely go over and check it out, please. It's a great place to hang. What about Comics Mentor? What's going on there?
Past week, on Monday, it was set your goals for the week. That's really, I could post that every Monday, and it would be new to somebody, but or news to somebody actually.
Right.
Really?
I'm supposed to set goals?
Yeah, and that's sort of a reminder to me too. Always, I mean, every encouraging or every note like that is always to me, because I think, like I said, if it's something that I really need to hear, then if somebody else benefits from it, so be it. So I'm not talking down to somebody. I'm always talking to myself first.
Right.
So I don't want people to take the wrong ideas, like, But that's really the biggest thing, is set your goals, and that goes along with things that we say on the podcast too. But you have to put things down and work toward those things. And Monday's always a good, every week has a Monday in it. So, if you don't do it this week, work on it next week. See how close you can get to
just
that.
those goals.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Blue Line. Good news. Sketch 40 is done. It is in shipping
Woohoo!
right now. So if you're a subscriber, you should be getting yours within the next week or so. They start shipping out tomorrow, and it is finally finished. Great news. It will be available in the Blue Line store to purchase, and it's a great interview. It's got some great articles in it, and we are so happy to get that one under us, and we are getting ready to jump on 41, the Alex Ross issue. So we're going to get these rolling out. So yeah, it's done. Again, the Sketch Magazine podcast app is available at the iTunes store. I love it. I was showing it off up in New York. It's a great little tool. So check that out. If you really like the podcast, you got an iPad or iPhone, you want to take it on the go. It's definitely a huge plus. We're going to run a contest over at CR to give one away. Want to do that, John? We'll get that set up.
Okay.
We'll give away one, and we're going to give one away over at Blue Line, and we'll probably give one away in the next Sketch Magazine 41. So we're going to give away a few, but go check it out. It's a great little tool, and I think it's like $1.99, so it's not bad. And really, that's it. So, John, how can they find you?
They can always find me hanging around Comic Related. They can email me at john@comicrelated.com or john@sketchmagazine.net. They can reach me and all of us at podcast@sketchmagazine.net.
And Bill?
I'm always on the comic-related forum because I'm specifically checking our podcast threads and our the magazine threads and the contest threads. So I'm usually there. I check back and forth, and also Comics Mentor.
Right.
So that's always a cool place to find me.
Let's see, I'm trying to update sketchmagazine.net. I try to put either podcast information. I put the latest podcast on the podcast page definitely every week. I'm at Blue Line, and now I am very much over at claysway.com. It's the new strip I got hitting. We're in our third week of posting a Strat account with my fingers. And it's we're building a community. Bill's helped me build a community. It's a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot there that I want to share about publishing web strips in the future. And so you can reach me at the podcast at sketchmagazine.net, or you can reach me at bobh@bluelinepro.com if you want to drop me a note, or catch me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook all the time. Just look up Robert W. Hickey on Facebook. Catch me there. So, all right, guys, appreciate it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
Good night.